The Pan Mass Challenge, otherwise known as PMC, this annual 1 and 2 day fundraising bike-a-thon brings together thousands of committed cyclists, volunteers, donors, and sponsors to bike across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in order to raise funds for the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute. Joining me in the studio is Newton resident and 6-time PMC rider, Michelle Abel. Thanks for joining me, Michelle.
Thank you for having me.
I just wanted to first start off asking you why you're in this fight. You've been in this fight for 6 years. How has it changed over the years?
I have. Well, I originally started riding the Pan Mass Challenge because I had a friend who was riding it, and he had recently lost a friend. And he said, hey, why don't you join me? I ride this Pan Mass Challenge, and this was back in 2001. He said, why don't you join me? It's a really fun ride. It's a really well-run event, and it's for a great cause. And at the time, I had seen my mother go through treatment for cancer, and had a friend who also had cancer, had breast cancer. But I didn't have a lot of people in my personal life that had struggled with cancer, but I knew what a big issue it was. So I thought that it was a great cause, and I joined the ride. And after I did that first ride, I really, really loved it. I could see immediately the impact that we were having, not just by seeing the numbers in terms of dollars that were being raised, but during the event itself, there are a lot of people there who are cancer survivors or people who are going through treatment for cancer, including a lot of children, that we can actually meet and see during the event, who are telling us about what they're going through or what they've been through. And it lets you see firsthand the difference that you're making. There are people all along the route at the Pan Mass Challenge holding up signs saying, you're saving my mom, or you saved me, or I'm a cancer survivor. And then you see people riding the Pan Mass Challenge. We call them the living proof. And they are people who are cancer survivors, and they're actually getting on that bike and riding. So after my first year, it was really apparent that the ride was something I wanted to commit to doing any year that I was physically able to do so. So I did it for 4 years, and it was wonderful. The event was so well run, and there was really, logistically, they made it so easy to do. There was no reason not to do it. Mm-hmm. So then I ended up taking a break for 10 years while I was going through a series of medical procedures of my own, unrelated to cancer. And I came back to the ride again in 2015. So that was my 5th ride, but after a long break. And when I came back, the story had changed immensely. The difference from being in my first rides, where I knew a few people with cancer, this time around, we had just lost my sister-in-law, who had battled for many years with cancer. And she left 5 kids who are, of course, very special to us. But it sort of left us feeling hopeless, right? What do you do? So I knew that my health was back where it needed to be, and it was time to get back on the bike. So she's just one person of a big list of people that I now ride for.
And you actually brought in a helmet, and that includes the list of people you ride for?
It does. So this is my helmet. A lot of people who ride the Pan Mass Challenge will put pictures on the back of their jerseys or list names. For me, I put ribbons. So there's 20 ribbons here, and on these ribbons are the names of everyone that I'm close to that has fought cancer. So there are 4 people on my helmet that we've lost. But there are 16 others that have either fought cancer and are now cancer-free, or who are currently going through treatment. And when I am riding those hills or feeling like I'm just out of energy and I can't do it anymore, I think of what they've gone through, and I think, gosh, this is nothing. What I'm going through on this ride is nothing compared to what they've gone through. So they're my inspiration and the reason why, there's a millions of strangers out there who have gone through what these people have gone through, but they're the ones that I know personally, and that really give me the extra motivation to do the ride.
Okay, and speaking of the ride, this year you rode on August 6th, this past Saturday.
I did.
Starting in Babson College in Wellesley all the way to Bourne, so about 85 miles. Can you tell me about this year's ride? How'd that go?
It was great. We had the threat of rain, which is always a little scary. In I think the second year that I did the Pan Mass Challenge, it poured the entire time, and I wiped out at least 4 times because it gets a little dangerous out there. And the Pan Mass Challenge, they do everything they can to keep the ride safe, and they give us warnings, and they just do such a great job there. But of course, when the weather is inclement, there's a few things that you can't control. So we really lucked out that the rain held off along the route until almost everybody was in. So the weather was beautiful. The ride from Babson is I look forward to it every year. It's just such a great ride, and it's mostly downhill that way. So I won't say that's why I choose that route. The Sturbridge route is a little more challenging. That one is a few extra miles, and there are a few other towns that you go through on that route that are a little hillier. But I live in Newton, so the Babson start is a great place for me to start my ride.
And you've done other routes in the past. You've done the Sturbridge route.
I have. My first 4 years I did Sturbridge to Provincetown. So that's the 2-day ride. That's to Bourne, and then you stay overnight, and then you get back on that bike and you ride then from Bourne to Provincetown. Again, another gorgeous route because you're going over the dunes of Truro on the way
Cape.
up there. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
It is.
Now, you ride for the biggest corporate team in the Pan Mass Challenge.
One of the biggest, yeah. The biggest corporate team, but also one of the premier sponsors.
Yeah, PwC.
Yeah.
Pricewaterhouse?
PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Yes. Now, you got your foot in the door fairly easily, would you say, into doing this program?
I did. So when I started the Pan Mass Challenge, PwC was not yet a sponsor. So it was during those years that I had taken a break that PwC became involved with the Pan Mass Challenge. And I was so excited when I started riding again that my firm was such a big sponsor and that we had such a big team, because then it was not a question for me that was the team I was going to ride on. And now it's so great to see so many friendly faces. Everyone at the PMC is a friendly face, but to see so many faces from my company there and to be able to cheer each other on, not only at the event, but as we're leading up to the event, we can share ideas for fundraising. We can, talk to each other about, who's doing what route, and there are a lot of training rides that are organized also. So depending on where you live and which routes you want to ride to train, there's always somebody who's getting ready for the PMC and that you can train with.
Who's willing to step up to.
Exactly.
And so there's hundreds of employees from PwC that participate. How do they get their foot in the door? Does PwC promote? How does that work?
Yep. So PwC talks about the PMC a lot throughout the year. But as we're leading up to the time that you can register for the PMC, we start sending out notices and doing some internal marketing about it, trying to recruit riders and volunteers. So even if someone's not interested in riding or able to ride, or someone's not a biker, there are a lot of volunteer opportunities and ways to get involved. The Pan Mass Challenge has so many water stops and so many other tasks that need to be done, as you can imagine, to prepare for such a huge event. So PwC has a lot of volunteers that will go and participate in those events. So all of those people we consider part of our team. And we're really excited and proud to be able to have such a large group of us go. When you're a company as large as we are, it's easy to give money, but I think our biggest resource is our people, and to be able to give our time and to allow people to be able to go and spend their time without having to take vacation time. It's just volunteer time.
And there's volunteers, and then there's fundraisers like you who ride the race and raise the funds. Who sets the team goal? And this year is $250,000, and you guys are still fundraising into October, but who sets that team goal?
Well, we look at how many riders we have and kind of what we were able to do the prior year, and then we try to set a realistic goal for what makes sense. So we have a committee of people within PwC who are Pan Mass Challenge team members. So we've got a sort of an internal committee who's dedicated to really focusing on the Pan Mass Challenge and making sure that it's a priority for our firm. And so they take a look at it every year to see what our goal should be.
Okay, great. And I just have one last question for you.
Sure.
Do you have a message for anybody who wants to get into this ride, who has similar reasons like you, but may not have the courage or may not have the confidence to step forward and take this ride? Do you have a message for any people like that?
Sure. There are so many ways that you can participate, and you can start by just volunteering and going to the Pan Mass and working at one of the water stops so that you can kind of see, what's this all about and what does it really involve. So if you're not quite ready to be a rider, that's a great way to take a first step. We've got thousands of people that are making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and filling the Gatorade bottles and helping people who need to go to the medical tent or who need to have their bike tires pumped up. And it really takes all those volunteers, and every single one of them is so important and crucial to making the event as well run as it is. Some of the other ways would be checking out one of the kids' PMC rides and seeing how those go. But there are 12 different routes for those who are actually ready to take the step and actually bike at one of the events. And I think the shortest route is a 27-mile route. Okay. And that takes place over one day. And that's something that if you're not huge into biking and you don't need to have a fancy racing bike, you can get out there on your mountain bike. And you know what? There are kids who do it on their scooters for the kids PMC. So that's a great way to take sort of that first step into it and see how you want to do
steps.
It. Exactly. Yeah. There's also a route that's around 50 miles. So you can go Babson to Bourne, you can go Bourne to Babson, you can go Babson to Babson, so just sort of a route. I think that's the shortest route. So there are a lot of different lengths of rides. You don't have to commit to the full 192 miles.
I know that feels very daunting just to look at all those thousands of riders, and it's a long ride. But thank you so much for joining me in the studio, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I really appreciate you coming here.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. If you want to donate to the Pan Mass Challenge, to Michelle's team, you can go to pmc.org.